Did you know that BDSM and kink are healthy outlets for aggression, imagination, and attention? Hi, and welcome to the Partition, home of kinky wellness. My name is Dana Slosser, and I'm a sexual wellness coach that dives deep into all things kinky. I'm here to show how BDSM and kink deserves a rightful spot within the sexual wellness conversation. So, let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Partition podcast. Dana here with our reoccurring guest, Kat. Welcome back to the Partition podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships and society's need to be in one and the obsession that they have around relationships. Today, I'm joined with Katrina.
Hello from lovely England.
So how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. How have you been?
Perfect. So far, so good. So glad to have you here. I just wanted to start off with, so you haven't been in a relationship for 5 years. And I guess I just wanted to know your perspective of how you've been treated and the pressure that you might get.
Yeah, so I made an actual decision to not be in a relationship about 5 years ago. So a lot of that reason, like, it wasn't for anything terrible. It was just, I kind of realized I had to put some things like myself, my mental health, and also things like stability, like my financial stability, my home and stuff like that. I just needed to put some things in order before I started kind of thinking about a serious adult relationship. And like, for me, I'm happy with it. Like, I go on dates, and I've kind of done it on and off. So I have like moments where usually it comes off the back end of talking to like my family or talking to like other people. And like, when you say about society, like, I do find there is a lot of pressure for women especially, but just a lot of pressure for people within like late 20s to, I'd say, 30s onward, this idea that you need a relationship, like, not necessarily, you know, if I'm not actively looking for one, or if I'm not actively wanting one, suddenly I'm treated like there's something wrong with me. And it's not necessarily, I understand it doesn't come from, like, especially with my family, it doesn't come from a situation of like ill intent. It's more like they're worried, oh, Kat lives on her own, Kat does this, Kat does that, what if anything happens, blah blah blah. And I do get it from that, and I get being worried that I'm lonely, especially living in a city where I'm not surrounded by my family. But then I am like, I'm not lonely, I've got these amazing relationships around me, but unfortunately society doesn't put as much weight or as much stock into the relationships I have with my friends as they do with relationships I have with potential partners.
Do you get the feeling that it's because they think that you're missing something out of those platonic relationships, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, like, I know on some level there is a sexual element, there is a element of like, oh my God, she's not in a relationship, she's not having sex, therefore she's missing something. And it's like, one, okay, I haven't had sex in 4 years. However, I'm having the best orgasms of my life, so I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, I think it's also like the lack of desire to settle down is just baffling, I think, to people, where they're like, but why don't you want it? Like, why don't you want to make a life relationship? Why don't you want this romantic relationship where you want to settle down and make a life with somebody? And I've always said, like, I'm open to it. I go on dates, as I said. However, I don't want to rush into it, and I don't want to be in a situation where it feels like I'm in a relationship just for the sake of like that worry of being lonely. Because I think that's where a lot of it stems from. It's not about love. It's not about even liking another person. People want you to have a romantic relationship so they don't have to worry that you're on your own. Like,
yeah. And I think that the obsession of a relationship so quickly is a part of why we have so many problems with interpersonal relationships. And like, it's interesting how they want, or I guess it feels like society wants us all to be in these relationships, but nowhere really along the way, unless you're taught from a stable standpoint. Not a lot of people have really good examples of what a relationship is. Like, for example, I didn't have any really good relationship examples. Everybody in my family is divorced. Like, at this point. And I can't say that I like the dynamics between my grandparents on my mom's side, because it was so 1950s traditional, like housewife style, that I was like, I can't even sign up for this. I'm not even the same type of person. So it was difficult to kind of find my way through what type of relationship you could even have.
No, I agree. So I come from my situation is a bit different. So my parents are divorced, my mum and my biological father. And I had these two very different relationship like guidelines. So on one end, I had like my mum and my stepdad, who have been together for like over 20 odd years, like since I was 4. And they are stable, they are happy, they drive each other nuts. They have that, but they have this relationship where it's like, it's the little things, not the big things. And that's, I think, why they work so well, is they're like, you know, it doesn't feel like they need, oh my God, we got to check this box off of every single, you know, marriage, baby, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're like, no, we do our own thing. And I always like, I took my mum until I was 16 before my stepdad was allowed to even move in with us. So like from that perspective, I was like, it's never been a big thing to want my freedom, to want my independence, and to want my own space, because that's what I was taught. You don't have to give 100% of yourself to your partner. My mum still has her friends. She still goes out regularly, you know.
Yeah, see, I was taught the exact difference. Like literally my grandma would, there's one instance where I had a boyfriend over, and he came in and she was like, go make him toast. And I was like, do you want toast, my partner? And he said no. And I was like, great. Like, no, end of story. We can all just sit down. And she was like, no, like you can't, like you're going to be a terrible wife if you don't do this. And I was like, this isn't how our relationship works. Like if he's hungry, he'll go feed himself. Like that's type of relationship that I'm in. And she made such a big deal of it. She even said like, do it for me. And I see now, like it just got so overblown that I just went and did it, because it's just one of those things like, okay, she's an old lady, just shut up, like, ah. But it drives me so angry inside. You know what I mean? On the inside, I'm like boiling, like, this is so annoying. And my partner at the time was standing right next to me at the toaster being like, this is so stupid. Like, we're both standing at the toaster being like, who the fuck wants this toast? Like, it was just so funny. So, but yeah, even still, like I would put mousse in my hair, you know, to curl my hair. And it would give a wet look. And she would say, you know, no one's going to date you if you have wet looking hair. Like you're never going to be a good wife if you don't do this. And it was always, you have to be some other person's person. Like you have to like seriously sell yourself to a man and just do everything for him.
I've had really similar conversations. So I always have like one that always sticks out for me, especially with being single, was like when I started my first place of work, when I finished my master's, I was talking to one of the other members of staff. They were also queer. They'd been in a long-term relationship with their partner since they'd been at uni, and like their bafflement when I was like, yeah, I just didn't really have a relationship when I was at uni. Like I went on dates, I flirted, I had a friends with benefits situation, but it just didn't really like, it wasn't for lack of trying, but it just didn't happen because the Dutch university systems are a little bit different. But I was too busy out with my friends, I'll be honest. But also, like, I always remember the biggest one was I went on a date, and I get told I have a habit of putting my walls up. And actually, I'm starting to realize I don't think I do. I look at how healthy my parents' relationship is. And I refuse to compromise for anything less than that. You treat me with respect and I will treat you with respect. We have our own lives. I think it's a very healthy mindset. But this person was like, I just remember it was like somebody, they were very like overly emotional. They were a little bit, they had emotions. Yeah. They were a little bit more, what they wanted was a lot different than me. They wanted somebody who was softer. They wanted somebody who was less independent. And they definitely wanted somebody who, you know, basically wanted them to move in within the second date. And I remember saying like, I don't like that. And I always remember being told by you're going to be single until you learn to compromise. Like you've got to learn to compromise with other people. And I thought about it for a while, and I was like, but it's interesting how compromising has to mean I change my personality.
right off the bat.
Yeah, compromising for me is we've both said we want to go somewhere, we want to go and do something. So we agree, okay, one night we'll do this, one night we'll do that. Or when we're starting to think, like those little things, like compromising is like, I like to go out.
I think compromising comes later in the relationship. I don't think that you build off compromise. I feel like I've been in relationships where I started off on compromise. No, I have been in at least one relationship where I compromised too much of myself right off the bat. And I wound up in the worst relationship of my fucking life. And I couldn't figure out what the hell had happened. Because again, I think it went from, okay, like, don't compromise. So I never compromised. So there I am, a rigid bitch, I guess, like in some might say like I would never. But then I went off the deep end with some people, and there has to be some sort of middle ground. But no, I right off the bat, never.
Also, I think as well, and I remember saying it, I was like, it's interesting how my compromises have to mean me putting myself in an emotional and mental state where I'm not comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't like people who are too touchy-feely. I get a little bit, it annoys me. Like I'm not the most affectionate person at times. And to be told that means I have to suddenly allow people to grab at me and to hug me whenever they want, or to make out with me in public. I don't like PDA. Personally, it just makes me ick. I'm like, but it's interesting how like all of it included that, or I had to put myself in an emotional state. They got access to things I wasn't comfortable with them doing that, or like having that kind of access to me on an emotional level. And I remember saying that to my friend, and she was like, well, you're going to be single forever. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'd rather be single and happy than in a relationship and miserable. And like, I've noticed it as well with like the recent date that I went on, it felt like so many red flags as well. Like, okay, we agreed we want to take it slow. We agreed that it wasn't going to be one date, 2 date, we're in a relationship, or like one U-Haul lesbians moving in together like the old Joan Pitt. But I realized that the way they had like almost trauma dumped on me and almost put me in this situation where if I walk away, I'm the asshole. And I think a few years ago, if I hadn't have sorted my mental health out, and if I wasn't so happy with my life right now, I feel like this is something I could have been guilted into. It put me in a situation where like walking away, I'm immediately the bad guy, because they opened themselves up to me and they told me these very deep personal things. And it almost kind of like makes it, oh, I have to be emotionally open now. So yeah, okay, the relationship, we might not have like agreed that we were in a relationship for another 4 months if we had agreed to, or if I had agreed to another date. But I definitely would have been trapped in this relationship, this monogamous relationship, where that would probably have made people in my family so much happier, because she's in a relationship. And afterwards, I kind of had to sit down and be like, there was so many red flags that if that's what emotional compromise is, I don't want to be in there, because you put me on the spot. And it was awful, like having to sit there and bite my tongue, and having to sit there and kind of not be able to put my foot down, and also feel like I've already told you I'm uncomfortable with this type of conversation, but you've just bulldozed over everything, and realizing that that's what the relationship would be.
But the thing is that even if you said that you were in a relationship like this, there very much are, to add to your comment before, like they would just be happy that you're in a relationship. Honestly, that's what the advice that they're giving though, like be in a bad relationship and compromise, because that's just the way it is. And it's like, just because this might be the way it is for you, this is not my definition. And yeah, I think that like that need to push you, be in a relationship. It's like, where the fuck is that coming from? Like society, I think, also builds it to like, oh, your significant other, like, oh, buy this for your significant other. Like there's a lot of consumerism around partners throughout our whole year, like our whole calendar year. It's filtered with one holiday after the next celebrating significant other.
Yes. And like even things like birthdays. So like talking about that one, I suppose, like it's a really weird one. So my biological dad goes through relationships like that, by the way. Like I always say he loves to ring by because he's had quite a few fiancés. And like, bless his heart, all he wants is to meet the love of his life. He wants to be in a relationship and he just wants that. So he does like the minute he's in a relationship, we do Christmas together. I'm like, you've been together for a year, 6 months. Why are you doing Christmas with their family?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Valentine's Day is something they go all out for. Birthdays are something they go all out for. And then they were like, well, what? And I remember him asking, like, so what does your mum and Steve do for Valentine's Day? And I was like, nothing. Steve knew my mum was the one because he bought her on their first year. He got guilted into buying her Valentine's Day roses and a card. And my mum went, oh, I forgot that was a day people celebrated. From then, knew she was perfect.
That's so cute.
It is, and they don't celebrate Valentine's Day because our argument is like, if we're gonna celebrate our relationship, we don't have to do it on a set day. We celebrate together all the time.
Yeah.
It's the little things, not the big things. And it was quite an interesting one because like talking about that birthdays, this person that I went on a date with, we were talking about birthdays. Now, I am awful for remembering birthdays. You could tell me yours now. I could write it on my diary. I could even sticky note it on my wall. I will still probably forget to get you your birthday card and you will get a 2-week later text going, you had a great day, babe. It's not anything rude. It's just that thing, that part of my brain, it isn't there. I'll remember other things though, but I don't remember birthdays. And I said this to them and I was like, oh, are you expecting they were like, oh, well, I'm expecting a card. And I was like, I wouldn't hold your breath. Like, honestly, one, I'd already decided we weren't seeing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it was the way, and they were like, oh, well, well, do you like cards? Like, are you a person who likes cards? And they were like, well, they tried to go onto a story about that ex. And I was like, no, that's not the question.
Yeah.
Do you or do you not like cards and expect cards on your birthday? They were like, yes. And I went, I don't like cards. I don't like that kind of thing. It really unless cards have money in, cards are meaningless. And they were like, oh, and I was like, because I don't like them, even when I do remember people's birthdays, the likelihood of me giving people a card is still like up in the air.
But even that, like, I think it's even maybe here on my side, cards sometimes aren't even enough. Like, it's the thing where relationships is like more of what a showman's could be. Like, look at this flashy, fancy thing. And like in comparison to like a type of relationship that's all about the cards, all about the gifts versus relationships where they don't really care about Valentine's Day. And it comes down to like the quality of that relationship. And I do find that Valentine's Day and things like that, they give like these random days for couples that should break up, like a chance to almost like rekindle their relationship. But it's one of those things like you wouldn't even do this like unless the calendar told you to do this for this person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I view Valentine's Day too. Like celebrate if you want, but in the same breath, when I see people go fucking far out for Valentine's Day, and then you get to know those type of people,
they do nothing for their partner for the rest of the year, and you're like, that's not love. And I think when you do like with the first question, like, do I feel like I get treated by society, or even like not even just like society on a general level, but even on a micro level, like with family, I do think I get treated a bit differently, and I do get treated almost like there is something a little bit worrying. And I also find as well, like, the pressure to have a romantic relationship has definitely, I would say, influenced me in going on dates with people. So I would say like it's almost like it's not even people I particularly like I said, like I went on a second date with somebody and I already knew from the get-go I didn't want to go on this date. I kind of felt bad canceling so late. But also, like I said, like, yeah, like every time I go on a date, people get so excited and so, oh my God, tell me more, tell me all the details. And I'm like, it's an interesting one where, like, even going back to our last episode about attention, it's a positive attention I get when I tell people I'm going on dates. Like, it's almost like the praise. Good girl, you're trying to do things like other people.
Normal, quote unquote, normal.
A normal person. that it's like I end up on these dates and I'm like, there's nothing there. I don't want to be on the dating sites. I don't really have a connection with you. We're both looking for this in the wrong way. You can tell it anyway. And like, yeah, I end up, and I find the time I do end up going back on the dating sites, definitely come after conversations with friends and family where all they've done is told me, oh, you should think about getting back out there. And when you're in a relationship and blah, blah, blah. And maybe it is because a few of my nearest and dearest are now in relationships. So I don't get to see them as often. That maybe a part of me is going, well, maybe I should be in a relationship so that I get some attention from someone. But then I go on these dates and I have a worse time and I have a miserable time. And I don't know what it is. I just keep meeting the same types of people that seem really well and informed and seem really nice. And then it goes back to that, like I said, I don't enjoy it when people compliment me and that first compliment is about my tits or my ass or about my looks. I'm like, you don't want to get to know me. Or even like I said, like almost feels like I date to get some praise from other people, to be like congratulate. And then I'm like, but I like being single. I like my relationships I love my friends. I'm surrounded by love and support every single day. I love my life. I love being like, there is nothing in my life that I feel like I'm missing. And there's no like, so why should I change it right now? Like, yes, I'm open for a relationship, but unless you are going to treat me the way I want to be treated, unless I have a relationship like my family, like my parents, as a healthy basis for a relationship, well, we have our own lives. We are two separate, distinct people. We're not looking to be these emotional crutches for each other, where, like you said, we just celebrate the holidays. Like, literally we check boxes off just to say we're in a relationship. Like, for me, it doesn't do anything. So yeah, I definitely feel like going off of it, I do get treated different. And it has impacted the way I have had relationships. But I think going forward, it's something I need to work on for me, where I go, I don't do that. And it is something I'm starting to try to do, hopefully.
Good.
But obviously, like, that's from my perspective. And obviously for you, from like a BDSM perspective, I always wondered, like, how would you say, like, those types of relationships, like your dom sub relationships, like how have they kind of impacted the way you view relationships within society?
Yeah, absolutely. The dom sub relationship showed me that adults can quite literally create any type of relationship they want if you just talk about it. But I found, and as much as that statement just communicate seems so basic, I found that I've communicated way more through dom sub relationships than I ever did really in actual romantic relationships. Because sometimes in romantic relationships, you don't want to say too much because you don't want to, one, scare somebody or upset them or something. You're still in that new stage. Or at least I used to be like that a little, because if I like somebody, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm crazy, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm weird. Like a big one is like, I'm a weird person. So I used to say, okay, well, don't show my weirdness too much. And that used to be something that used to be part of me. Now it's like, I put my weirdness on the table. Here's all my weirdnesses. Here's my weirdnesses that I used to not say, because now I'm just going to put everything here, take it or leave it. But I didn't learn that type of shit until BDSM relationships. Because I'm thinking to myself, I didn't have good examples for relationships growing up, but also schools don't really teach you, not as that their job to teach you how to be in a good relationship, but in the same breath, for kids that didn't have good role models, the school is where you are predominantly most of the time. So that's where like you would learn how people can treat you or respect. And even to go so far as your treatment on teachers, how your teachers treated you growing up has an effect almost of how you structured your relationships. But BDSM and kink, I could just say, this is what I want. Contact me on Tuesdays. You're my Wednesday person. That's it. You're done. Like, that's it. Here you go. And then it would be good as gold. But what's funny is that this is all okay by me, okay by my partner, everything's okay. But then when you start saying like, oh, I have a dom or I have a sub or whatever the case may be, people just, they shut up. They just go, what? What is that? What is this? And it's like, it's what a fuck buddy should be, is what I actually believe BDSM couples is. It's like, fuck buddies to me is such a loose term that, and half the time when I meet people that are saying like, that it's one, I used to be like that, or like I have fuck buddies, but now it's like, man, I had no structure with those people. There was cross boundaries all the time. We didn't talk about things the way we should have. We weren't open enough the way we should have. So being in a BDSM relationship, it's cool because you get all the benefit of perks of being in a romantic relationship without any of those downfalls, in the sense, like, I don't have to worry about going to some family event, or they don't have to worry about my family event. Like, because there was nothing to lose, really. You're
So
like,
with, oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, so there's nothing to lose because you just say everything up front. But again, I was thinking back to fuck buddies, like, I don't think I ever thought like that. Maybe it's just because I didn't know maybe that information just quite well enough yet. But
I think with fuck buddies, so like just as an aside, I do have a follow-up question though.
yeah.
But with fuck buddies, it is one of those where a lot of people I meet that say they have fuck buddies don't have fuck buddies. They have
Yes.
pseudo relationships that are extremely toxic, where it's like, you know, my thing for a fuck buddy, it was a genuine friend. It was somebody who we had a very, very personal relationship. We had a very good friendship. We worked well in the bedroom together. And that was it. Neither of us wanted to be with each other. Compatibly, we were awful. We would have been awful for each other. But we enjoyed sex. We wanted to have sex with somebody that we trusted. So why not do that? And it was a little bit of closeness. And then we were still, you know, they were still going off on dates and trying to find a boyfriend. I was off doing what I wanted to do. Like, there was none of that kind of, yeah, we had those boundaries and we knew what that boundary was. But no, I do agree with you. But follow-up question to like what your answer was like, so with the dom sub relationships, do they like, because I think a lot of people automatically assume romance and like it has to be a romantic relationship. But have you found, like, for yourself, like with the dom sub relationships, that they don't have to be, or have they all been?
They're not. That's the thing. They're not romantic at all. I think that's what it is. Like, it's just going out there for, this is what I'm seeking. Like, if I wouldn't say, if I was going to look for a romantic relationship, I wouldn't be asking the same structured questions that I do for a dom. There's overlap questions for sure. But for instance, if I wanted to get to know somebody in a romantic sense, then I'm asking questions about like more of their interests. Like for doms, it's more like, okay, I want to know about your interests, but only specifically towards sex or whatever we're going to do. Like, I just want to know about you on this way. And like organically, you can meet people like and know more about them. Obviously, the longer the relationship, I guess, or partnership is. But I do view BDSM relationships more like partnerships, because there isn't a romantic element. Like, maybe it can grow into a romantic element for sure. But yeah, like they don't have to start out romantic, not at all.
No, that's an interesting one, because I think, yeah, when people, obviously, like even when you see the media that's consumed around it, and like, you know,
well, that's the thing. Like, for instance, a big thing about how I built my relationships, I guess, around it is because that tough love element. And the praise at the same time. Like, I used it more as like it was a fun tool, but also like to tailorize the relationship or the partnership specifically for emotional and physical sexual elements that I wanted to get out of it. Like, specifically, this is the purpose and the role of which you are in my life for. And then you can just mutually just say, okay, like we're done here, like move on and things like that. But romantic relationships, sometimes you take them to a place where you can't come back from. Unless like a dom has really gone out of their way. Like, for instance, I have had bad experiences with doms where they just lied like right off the bat, but you can't fix, like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, once you find out you're lying, you just cut and leave. But if they're also just ethically doing BDSM, then normally it doesn't get to that point. Like, ethically, I've been in relationships or partnerships with doms and they've just been like, you know what, things have changed, my schedule have changed, feelings have changed, things have changed, like, can we end it or this or that? And it's like, yeah, absolutely, thank you, shake hands and you move on. But unless
2 weeks notice.
Sorry?
You get your 2 weeks notice.
Honestly, it's funny. I once said like I needed 3 months notice to a dom dad if he was ever gonna leave. I was like, listen, I need some notice if you're gonna move on. Okay. This is the best I've ever had. So like it's one of those jokes. Like but yeah.
Like what you said, like it is a partnership, and like I have got friends that have gone on to do it. Like this is like not just part of their life, this is part of their job. So on that side of things as well, like when you are active. You must have to be like almost contractual with it. Just be like, you can leave it on the table as you leave, or email it to me.
Okay, I'm so funny. I made a resume once. I made a resume with my name. Yes, I made a resume of all the things that I would and would not do, and all of these things, and what I'm seeking, and like my skills and expertise, ha ha ha, and like all these funny things, and it was so jokes. But that's the thing. I find that dom sub relationships, at least the ones that I've been in, those partnerships are funny. They don't take themselves so seriously. Like I find that you can just laugh through them, and but it's weird. But when I'm meeting strangers for the first time, like in those relationships and those partnerships of like meeting new friends, boy, am I a different person. I feel like I shut down. It's like, I don't like, the first time I meet people, I'm like, I don't know this person, walls up everywhere. Like, you don't know their morals, you don't know their code, they don't know shit. Like, and these people don't need to know so much about you. I used to be one of those people. I used to be like, here's my life story. And sometimes I'm still like that if I do feel like, if the conversation is kind of going that way. But meeting just regular friends, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to say.
I'm like, I need to have shared interests or we can't be friends, unfortunately. I just find it really, no, that's how I make my friends now. It's very hard as an adult to make friends overall.
I don't do small talk. I'm not one for small talk. And I find that because doms, they were always so much older than me, the conversations were always so rich. They were rich conversations where I genuinely was learning so much about, I guess, life and business and this and that and all these things that I would seek out in these doms. But when I meet sometimes just people my own age, sometimes I find that hard because I don't like what they're talking about. I don't care. Like, I actually just don't fucking care. Like, I just sit there and I go, oh, okay. Like, I don't know who that is. I don't know what that movie is. I don't know who this singer is. Like, I don't know who these people are. I make friends easier with older people.
Understandable. No, I was always the same as well, growing up. And I find like the people that I tend to look towards relationships with and have a better vibe. I know that sounds cheesy, but somebody I do have a better vibe with does tend to be older people. I think that's why I was a bit surprised with this last date, why it went so awful, because they were like closer to my sister's age than my age. So they were like mid-30s. And I was sat there and I was like, but you're acting like somebody who's like their level of emotional, that level of like, oh, not openness, because I can't even call it openness. Weaponized sadness is what I call it, where people give you so much of their trauma or give you so much of like all the bad parts of their life story that you're almost sat there like, I don't know what the reaction you want is.
Yes.
Because if I change the subject, or if I not look callous, but like if I don't go, oh my God, that's awful, or give them back that side of me, like, am I the bad person? Am I the asshole for being like, like, although saying that, they did tell me a bad thing and I was eating my pancakes because I'm an adult and that's what I wanted for dinner.
That's funny.
And I'm eating my little strawberries and I'm nom my strawberries, and they told me something sad, and I must have looked like I was going to say something, but all I was thinking was like, nom my strawberries. That's literally how I go. And they were like, well, don't apologize because I hate it when people apologize. And I was like, I wasn't going to. I didn't do it to you. It wasn't my actions. I'm not going to apologize. Find that type of openness open. I find it manipulative as a way to control you and your actions, because you constantly have to make sure you're not the bad guy. So you end up saying yes to things you don't really want to do, or answering questions you don't want to answer. Mm-hmm. But no, I do get you. Like, I'm very open. I think I'm a very open person. Like, I'll tell people anything about me. But
it doesn't always have to be sad. That's the thing.
No,
when you open yourself up, it doesn't have to be sad.
Yeah, and also I think it's better not to. Like, I would find someone much more attractive. I'd be much more willing to go into a relationship if people told me their wins. Like,
yes,
tell me the good stuff that's happened to you. You've started your own business. You've started a new job. This has happened to you. You did this. Like, tell me something that is important to you, that you are passionate about, that is a good thing. And I'll be like, that's a really happy, that is a person comfortable in themselves. I am more likely to want to have a relationship with you. But I find a lot of people the attention they want needs to come from being sad, and therefore they take that with them into relationships. And that is, and we're almost it's romanticized into us within like the way, even like the movies we watch and shit like that. The amount of times we watch something and women are like, oh my God, that guy was so hot. And it was the dickhead because he was like emotionally open. He wasn't. He manipulated the main person. I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how many people think the edgy, psychopathic bad boy is like, he's got a soft soul. No, he doesn't. Like, and we see it in movies.
I think it's like I think it's not just women, but I think it's like we need to change them complex. Yeah. But I'm going to be the one to save them complex. But honestly, when it comes to relationships, I would rather create a dom relationship with things are on my term than be in some mediocre relationship. I see that there are quite a few people I know that are in these lukewarm relationship. If we can even call it lukewarm, I'm talking like the most boring, they don't do anything together. I can see one is definitely compromised way more than the other, to the point where I feel like it's at their health. All their effort goes into their partner, but their partner gives zero effort back. Like, I don't even think their partner even really cares at this point. But I voiced my opinion a few times, but at the end of the day, it's like you can't really change somebody and who they're with. But in the same breath, you can take a step back, because people that are in relationships that don't empower them become a different type of person. My relationships, when I create a dom, they're for a purpose. They're not to fear loneliness anymore. And I think that's what most relationships come down to, these mediocre ones, is to not be lonely. And even if that sounds harsh, it's just, again, how we're almost defenseless. Like, you have to be in a relationship, Valentine's Day, what are you going to do for New Year's? Who's going to be your New Year's kiss? Who's going to be your Valentine's Day? Who's going to kiss you while you're Irish on St. Patrick's Day? Like, shut up.
Yeah. No one.
No one. That's it. Like, I actually don't care, but it comes from the systems within too, because I do feel like they kind of teach that in school, like at least in mine. Like, yeah, the family dynamic of, you got to have a family, like you got to have kids, you got to be with someone young, and then you got to basically sacrifice your soul to make them feel better. And it's like, absolutely fucking not.
No, I agree. And I think also, like, it is such, especially like the age group that we're in, because we are, I think me and you are like, what, there is a year or so between us?
I'm 30 now, 30,
so I'm 29 this year. Mm-hmm. And I find like that's why so many people are pushing for a relationship, because they're almost worried that I'm going to get to my mid-30s and I'm going to end up single. And I look at the fact that I've got uncles, by the way, that are, and nobody has a go at the men. But it's also not even wanting, but just for being single. Whereas for me, it's almost like, yeah, you need to do this. And in order to do that, you have to become this completely different person. And I'm like, but those relationships aren't healthy. Like, I look at some of the relationships around me and I'm just like, but you're not happy. You're bored.
And we're missing a big part of it. Like, relationship with ourselves. That is such a big element that is not pushed at all. Like, anywhere in any of the, like, I don't know, it's just not pushed. The relationship with ourselves, our health, taking notice of our own body. Smallest of things. Is your skin dry? Is your hair dry? Like, do you take do you take a relationship with yourself? Like, for instance, I realized that I bruise easily, and now I've taken a moment to have a relationship with myself where it's like, okay, watch where you're fucking going. I know that sounds so stupid, but like, building that relationship with myself to be like, okay, I have dry skin. Now I have to fix this. Now this is part of it. Like, how do I romance myself? How do I pleasure myself? That was a big journey I had to do. How can I do all of these things by myself? But you don't get taught those when you're living in a dynamic that forces you so much to be in a relationship. Because now it's become codependent on someone else. And I have done that, like codependently put my responsibilities on someone else, thinking that that's what you're supposed to do.
And it's not even to your fault. Like, it's literally what we are told you are supposed to do. It's amazing how quickly people were happy to call me picky, or I've got too high standards, or I'm a bitch, because I did develop a relationship with myself. Like, I took 5 years, I had a relationship. It went very fast, very quickly. 4 months and it was over. We knew we weren't like, they ended it with me. We both knew it was moving too fast. We both knew we weren't really interested. We both knew it wasn't good. So she ended it, fine. And after that, it was me going, well, why did I go through these motions so quickly? And then also since then, since lockdown, since going and getting therapy and having sexual therapy over normal therapy, because I've got vaginismus, and having to understand why I got vaginismus, how I've got vaginismus. And I think the best, and like, how I can help myself overcome it. And then having to you literally, when you're using dilators, have to learn to have a relationship with your body. Yeah. When am I tensing? What has set me off? How do I get myself to stop panicking? And then from there, it was learning to be like, I know I will stop if it hurts. I know it will stop. So I will automatically respect my boundaries. So it was learning how to like reinstall those boundaries. What do I want from a relationship? What do I want from the people around me? Not even just romantic, but just like even in friendship. And then learning to say to people, these are my boundaries, you respect them. And it's an interesting one how, like, since doing that, so many people are willing to sit down and say to me that I am the bad person. The reason I'm single is because I'm wrong. And I'm like, but I have a better relationship with myself. I know who I am through and through. I know my flaws. I know my faults. I'll pretend I don't have any because I pretend I'm perfect all the time. Who doesn't? But you know what I mean? Like, I have such a good relationship with myself that I can literally live on my own and enjoy my own space. And then from there, because I'm comfortable, because I can invite people into my space. And it's trying to be like to people, like, I'm not saying I want to come into a relationship, me as the only person with this level of self-confidence and self-love. I want a partner that has that same level of respect and boundaries for themselves as well. Yeah. And it's such an interesting one that, like you said, like, but we're told not to. We're told you shouldn't be you've got to be independent. But then when you get to this age, you've got to not be so independent. I got called hyper independent once, and I was like, but that's not a bad thing. In fact, it was my mum, and she apologized for it. She's like, I feel like the reason you don't have relationships is because I made you too independent, so you don't know how to rely on people. And I'm like, but I do. Like, when I need help, I reach out to my friends. Like, I've not got so much pride that I'm going to sit here and suffer.
No, it's like a brainwashing almost of like, we've forgotten what it's like to be in a relationship with ourselves. Some of us don't even learn it. Some of us haven't learned it. Like, I know that I had to relearn it in the last few years. Like, you have to learn it. And there's a lot of crying involved.
I agree. And I also find, like, on that note as well, you see it very quickly in people that go from relationship to relationship to relationship. I am not worried about the person that has been single for so long. I'm more worried about the person who cannot be single for a few weeks at a time. I am more worried for the person who cannot be on their own for 6 months and treat themselves good without needing a relationship, because they're the
romantic relationship. Yeah, like this obsession over romantic relationships.
Like, to that point. But then I think that's a given, because they don't know who they are, unfortunately. And it's so sad to me. Like, I think I've had this with my friend where, like, sometimes, like, because I do sometimes feel sad for being single. I think we all have that. Like, I'm human. We all have those moments where we desire
we have moments of loneliness, but that does not make us lonely.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's a really good distinction as well. And it's being like, of course we do. Of course, there are days when I'm like, I would love to have a partner that just doesn't mind being domestic with me. Or I'd love to have a partner to try out BDSM with, because I honestly think I would love to try it. I just need to be in a safe environment for myself, so that nothing triggers my vaginismus, because that should be painful.
So your partner is the make or to break it. Like, if again, like, your health, well-being, overall, everything, like, they are the outcome. Like, they're definitely half of the reason why you're gonna have a particular outcome.
Yeah, agreed. So it needs to be on that side. There are times when I have that, but then I'm also sat there and I'm like, I've got other friends that like literally like they can't, like I know myself, and I've said it like with my friend where we're like, oh, how is it that I've got a friend who, or not a friend, but like, like I know somebody online and they're always in relationships, and I'm like, but they're not a nice person, they're not a good person, they're not a mentally stable person. In fact, like without being rude to them, they're very toxic as a person. And my friend was like, because the difference between them and you, and the difference between them and me, is we've been single for so long that we know how to be on our own. We know that if we're in a relationship, it's because we want a partner, we want a partnership, as you say, not I need somebody to help me be a person. And I find as well, like you said, like it was sad when you see the person who's like they lose the spark and then they just never really recover it, and then they're on their own, and then that's why they fall back into another very intense relationship. And you just sit there and you're just like, but surely you'd be happier if you like knew who you are, if you were, even if it is just your hair, your breathing, your sleeping patterns, you would be so much happier in everything you did, in every romantic relationship, if you knew who you were, because you weren't having to constantly change to fit another person.
Unfortunately, I think that's why relationships and toxic relationships are so out there and so popularized, is because like not popular, but kind of, yeah. Like you see it on there's a lot of teenage shows out there where it's like toxic relationships and that's the idols that they're getting.
Well, look at the kids' TVs that we grew up on. Like, what is it? Like you said, Hunchback of Notre Dame. She ends up with a man that stalks her.
Really? My beef with Hunchback of Notre Dame is in every Disney film, the guy who saves the girl gets the fucking girl, except this guy. This is the only, unless I'm like any of the old classics, even the Beast gets the girl at the end. Okay. Yeah. But not Hunchback. No, that's where we draw the line. So
no, he has his gargoyles.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I seriously love that movie though.
I love it. It's my favorite movie. But well, no, I agree. It's such an interesting one. Like, yeah. Although the original book is really depressing, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know any of I guess I don't know the origins of these real stories.
It's not a real story. So it's the guy who did Les Mis, like Les Miserables.
Yeah.
Victor Hugo wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame at the same, like, I think it's either before or after this book. And like in it, she's 14 and like she still ends up with the general. And you're like, oh, that ruins it for me a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I mean? Never look into the origins of Disney, of like old school Disney movies, is what I have learned. But they are all, if you look at them now, I think there are a lot of people who are, a lot of what we were told as kids through these types of relationship movies, like these types of like even rom-coms.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No,
I have one movie before we get off one movie. I do have one movie that I was forced to watch like a million times, and now I force others to watch it. So it was a movie my grandmother made me watch, and basically was like, this is what you're going to be like. And it's called 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
I know it.
Oh my goodness. So for those of you who don't know the premise of this film, it's about a man who goes into a town, marries a woman he just met, and then convinces his 6 other brothers to go into town and kidnap 6 other women. And by the end of the film, the women fall in love with the men that have kidnapped them and pretend that they all have a baby and they have to get married. And that's the story. But it goes into so much sex and racism and sexism and oh my goodness. And it's dancing and singing and it's a family film, but yes.
It's because it was, and I think I actually talked to my friend, my best mate, because we both love these old school musicals. And we were like, she was like, yeah, but if you remember the song that he is singing where they go and collect
sobbing women, yes.
Sobbing women, it's about the rape that happens in the Bible.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, like literally they glorified it as like, yeah, just men going out for love.
One of the lines is, if she's angry and annoyed, she's secretly overjoyed. And okay, so there's that one. And then they have another song that's completely dedicated to courting. But really, it's just about a man stalking a woman in the night and taking advantage of her. Like basically, like one of the lines is she's shaking out and he has to go in closer and dim the lights to this shaking woman. And and I used to fight with my family members over this film, and they would say it's not that big of a deal. And I would say, I do believe it is. I do believe this is a big deal. So
I'll be honest, I loved that movie as a kid. It wasn't until I was an adult and I was like, what? But then I think that I think most childhood movies that we all have, you go back and watch them, even Ghostbusters, and you're like,
oh my gosh, stop. Now I have to go back and watch Ghostbusters.
No, I love the movie, but when you watch it, they swore so much for what is now considered a PG. Like, okay, they're not saying like fuck or like, you know, the C word or anything like that. But what they are saying, like, you wouldn't get away with that now. It would be a 12A now. And I was like, I watched it and I was like, I love this movie. But there's so many, like, even the rise of the nice guy, I think you can even see it in that, like, the whole idea of like a relationship is if she says no, you just have to keep holding out. You just keep doing stuff. You keep being. And you see it now with people where like you can't turn people down. Like I've had it even with people I've been dating, or like even people that I've gone on a few dates with where you're like, I'm not really interested, so can we end this? And they still, can we still be friends? Can we still be this? Can we still, I'll still message you, or I still leave comments on stuff. And you're sat there and you're like, but I've not changed my decision, but you're clearly hoping I have. And that's why, like, if you don't going back to our original, but if you don't come from a stable family relationship, if you haven't got good relationships to look at and be like, okay, that's what these movies are literally your basis of romantic relationships. It's no wonder so many people are fucked nowadays.
No, yeah, absolutely. But on that note, I just want to say thank you for joining us today on our topic on relationships, where we range from movies to holidays and everything in between.
And obviously the old school musicals.
You know what? I think we need to have an episode just dedicated to movies. And if there's any listeners out there that have any fucked up movies like Seven Brides for Seven Women, or Seven Brides for Seven
Brothers.
Yes, please send them our way. We're happy to review them. That could be another segment.
I can't wait. We'll have to do like an online movie watch together.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Have yourselves a good day, and thank you for listening. As always, stay kinky.
Bye.
Well, that's it for us. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time. And as always, stay kinky.